What if I told you that one stranger, one conversation, and one simple prayer could save a life? Today you'll hear the remarkable story of a man who believed he had reached the end of his journey, only to discover that God had already arranged a divine appointment. Stay with me until the end, because the final lesson may be exactly what someone watching today needs to hear. The rain had been falling for hours, matching the heaviness that had settled over Marcus's heart. At 46 years old, he sat alone in his aging pickup truck overlooking the river that wound quietly through the edge of town. The windshield wipers swept back and forth, but they couldn't clear the fog that had filled his soul. He had reached the end. At least that's what he believed. Just 18 months earlier, Marcus had a steady job, a comfortable home, and dreams of growing old with the woman he loved. But life had unraveled faster than he could have imagined. The factory where he had worked for 23 years closed its doors. His unemployment stretched from weeks into months. Bills piled higher than the kitchen counter. The stress fractured his marriage until one painful afternoon, his wife quietly packed a suitcase, kissed him on the forehead, and whispered, "I don't know how to help you anymore." She left. Soon after, the bank took the house. Friends who once called every weekend slowly disappeared. The silence became unbearable. Marcus had grown up in church. He and his mother lived with his grandmother after his dad left. Life was not perfect, but it was good most of the time. Sometimes when he would get upset, as little boys sometimes do, his grandmother would sit beside him holding his small hands in hers. She would look at him and say, "Remember, baby, God is closest when you think he's far away, so don't stop praying." But those words felt like distant memories now. He had prayed, he had begged, he had cried. Nothing seemed to change. The day had brought back memories of all the things that had gone wrong in his life. He had found himself driving aimlessly for hours. Around 11, he found himself sitting beside the river on the outskirts of town. Earlier that day, Marcus had written 3 letters. One was for his daughter, one was for his sister. The third simply read, "God, I'm sorry. I just can't do this anymore." He stacked the letters carefully and placed them on the dashboard. His hands trembled. Tears streamed down his face. "I tried," he whispered into the empty truck. "I really tried." Outside, the rain continued to fall. He reached to open his door, intending to simply walk into the deep end of the river. Suddenly, there was a knock on the window. Startled, Marcus turned. Standing outside the window was an elderly man wearing a soaked brown coat and holding a broken umbrella that did little to protect him from the rain. Marcus rolled the window down only a few inches. The stranger smiled warmly. "Evening sun," he said with a familiarity that amazed Marcus. Marcus sighed impatiently. "I don't have any money, sir." The man chuckled. "I don't need any money." Marcus looked away. "What do you want?" The stranger studied him for a long moment before speaking. "I think God wanted me to tell you something." Marcus almost laughed. "Really?" Marcus shook his head. "God doesn't talk to me." The old man smiled again. "Maybe not the way you expect." Marcus stared through the windshield. He sat there quietly, then said, "I'm tired." "I know," said the stranger. "I've lost everything." "I know." "No," Marcus snapped. "You don't know." The stranger nodded slowly. "Can I tell you something? I buried my wife after 50 years of marriage." Marcus looked over at him. "I buried my son 2 years later." The words hung in the air. "I lost my business, my home, my health." The old man's voice never changed. "I know what darkness feels like." Marcus felt something inside him soften. The stranger continued, "There was one night I stood exactly where you're sitting." Marcus's breathing slowed. "I had already decided I wasn't going home." "What happened?" asked Marcus. The old man smiled toward the cloudy sky. "God sent someone." Marcus frowned. "What did they say?" The stranger looked directly into his eyes. "They said, your story isn't ending here." Silence filled the truck. Rain tapped gently against the roof. Marcus looked at the folded letters. "I don't think I have anything left." The old man leaned closer. "Sometimes God has to empty our hands before he can place something new in them." Marcus closed his eyes. For the first time in months, he allowed himself to cry. Not the quiet tears he had shed in secret, but deep, uncontrollable sobs that seemed to wash years of pain from his heart. The stranger simply stood there. No judgment, no hurry, just presence. When Marcus finally spoke again, his voice cracked. "I don't even know how to pray anymore." "You already have," the old man smiled. Marcus looked confused. The old man continued, "When you said, 'God, I can't do this anymore,' heaven heard every word." The stranger reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a weathered Bible. Its pages were worn thin. He opened it without looking and handed it to Marcus. Before him was a highlighted passage. The passage was Psalm 34:18. "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." Marcus read the verse 3 times, then 4. Something inside him shifted. Not because every problem had disappeared, not because life suddenly made sense, but because for the first time in a long while, he no longer felt completely alone. The stranger asked softly, "Would you let me pray with you?" Marcus nodded. Standing beside the truck in the pouring rain, the old man bowed his head. "Father, this precious son has carried burdens too heavy for one man to bear. Remind him that even here, even now, you have not abandoned him. Replace despair with hope, fear with faith, and loneliness with your presence. Show him tomorrow. Show him purpose. Show him that this chapter is not the end." When the prayer ended, Marcus wiped his eyes. "Thank you." The stranger smiled. "No." He pointed upward. "Thank him." Marcus laughed for the first time in months. It felt strange, but good. The rain had nearly stopped. The stranger began walking toward the nearby parking lot. Marcus called after him. "Wait!" The old man turned. "I never got your name," Marcus said. He smiled. "My name doesn't matter. But I'll tell you what my grandmother used to say. When you can't see God's hand, trust his heart." Then he walked away. Marcus sat there and thought about that for a few seconds, then hurried out of the truck to personally thank the stranger. To his amazement, the parking lot was empty. No cars, no people, just quiet. He searched everywhere. Nothing. He stood frozen. Had the man left with someone? Or had something far more mysterious happened? Marcus never found out. Standing there in the rain, he replayed what had happened. He could find no reasonable explanation. Instead, he climbed back into his truck. He picked up the letter addressed to God. He read it one final time. Then he tore it into tiny pieces. The wind carried them into the river. The next morning, Marcus called his sister, then a local church. Within days, things began to change. The church connected him with temporary work repairing homes damaged by storms. A month later, one of those jobs became full-time employment. He joined a men's Bible study. He began volunteering at a homeless shelter on Saturday mornings. There he met people whose pain looked remarkably like his own. Instead of hiding his story, Marcus shared it. Again and again, he would tell anyone willing to listen, "I thought my life story was over," he would say, "but God had another chapter waiting." Years passed. His daughter married. He became a grandfather. His joy slowly returned, not because life became perfect, but because he discovered something greater than happiness. He discovered hope. One Sunday morning, After speaking at his church about God's faithfulness, a young man approached him with tears in his eyes. "I was planning to end my life today." Marcus's heart nearly stopped. The young man continued, "But something told me to come here first." Marcus embraced him tightly. In that moment, he understood. Years earlier, God had sent a stranger to save one broken man. Now God was sending Marcus to someone else. The miracle had never been only about surviving. It was about becoming the answer to another person's prayer. Perhaps that's how God often works. He sends ordinary people into extraordinary moments. A phone call, a smile, a conversation, a prayer, a stranger willing to stop. If you are walking through a dark valley today, remember this. Your pain is real, but it is not the final chapter. The God who sees every tear has not forgotten your name. Even when you cannot feel his presence, he is already arranging tomorrow's hope. Hold on one more day. Reach out to someone you trust. Let others carry the burden with you. The same God who met Marcus in his darkest hour is still in the business of sending hope through unexpected people. Your story isn't over. The author is still writing. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone in need of hope. Then subscribe to our channel. God bless you.